Mm.
If I'm writing something with an eye to it, the final thing being a sample, okay, I guess.
There were a couple of comments and questions that were left on our YouTube page as well. By the way, we love questions, so we are happy to answer your questions during.
And also, caveat: these are based on our opinions and experience. Always. They're not necessarily the gospel truth.
We are not
There
gurus.
is no gospel truth.
We are not writer gurus. We are just writers.
Because writer gurus suck.
Yeah. It's funny. But, somebody posted on Reddit. They posted, if you could ask Robert McKee one question, what would it be? And my question was, Mr. McKee, considering the majority of your professional experience is story consultant on animated Barbie movies, what did you believe you had to contribute to writers of today writing successful screenplays?
I'm sure he's been asked that before. I'm sure he has. Well, it's interesting. We could go into, whether or not, I believe that some teachers are meant to teach and meant to inspire thought. I love John Truby. I love a lot of what John Truby has to say. I've really liked studying him. John Truby isn't, to my knowledge, a screenwriter, and yet he's written really interesting books on the nature of story.
But do you think that, okay, if it's a philosophical kind of analysis of story and the hit, like Joseph Campbell, I'm going to look at myths and I'm going to, and from an academic almost standpoint, look at what the myths are, then I go, okay, all right, fine. But if you're going to tell me how to do something, you should have done it yourself. Like, for example, you don't have a doctor start doing surgery just coming out of college. No, they have to do a residency. You know why? Because they need to learn from actual fucking surgeons. Right?
I think in the realms of art and creativity, it's interesting because I think, can you ask questions that promote
everybody has
thoughtful things, but it's like I've read both Story and I've read Truby, I've read Christopher Vogel. These are all things, and again, I don't look at those as
I read them.
Like I don't look at them as Bible examples of how to do it, but they got me thinking in certain ways.
But a lot of people do. I mean, they're considered gurus for a reason. And a lot of people treat their word like gospel. And a lot of people do pay an enormous amount of money to go see them live.
They do.
And they make more money doing what they're doing than they would probably as a screenwriter.
And there are many, many things out there. I think in many lines of work whereby you are hopeful of this thing, acting as well. How many casting director workshops did I do when I used to be an actor? Come and pay $100 to do this casting, and you're hoping, you're thinking, I'm going to meet someone, I'm going to connect with someone.
What's interesting about that, I will say, and I did those as well when I first moved out to be an actor. What's interesting to me about those, and they're kind of they're kind of taking advantage of young actors. I totally agree. And they give you this idea, well, maybe I'll cast you.
Yeah.
But at least the people that you are, quote unquote, learning from are people in the business who could give you a job one day.
I hear that.
You're learning from the real deal. Like what I love about Masterclass, for example, and I don't think that it's the end all be all either. However, if I want to learn about filmmaking, Martin Scorsese is a pretty good fucking teacher, or James Cameron, and or if I want to learn about TV writing, Shonda Rhimes is a really good teacher.
Yeah.
Like I would much rather learn from working professionals. I've only ever taken one screenwriting class. It was one class. It was at UCLA Extension. And my teacher was a man named Quentin Peoples. And he was a working screenwriter. He wasn't just an author of books about screenwriting. He taught at UCLA Extension because he enjoyed teaching, because he felt like he had something to offer to new screenwriters. But in his other time, he was working in Hollywood. He had active projects at that moment, one with Billy Crystal at the time, I believe. And so you go, oh, well, you're the kind of person I actually want to learn from, because you could spend all day learning craft. If you don't know how to make a movie if you don't know how to write for the marketplace, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
And so,
I hear it. And but it's interesting though, because as an actor, I was taught by both people who had been and were working actors, and then who also were just very, very, very good acting teachers as well. Who got me thinking in certain ways and asking certain questions and teaching me how to do exercises and observing those exercises. So I personally think that there's room for both. I think there is room for learning from genuine people, experiencing the ins and outs of a chosen field, and people who are good. But again, I think it's really important, especially for emerging writers, to not get for example, there's so many screenwriting competitions out there, so many. And what qualifies you to run a screenwriting competition? I think that's what you have to look at in each particular example. Go, what actually qualifies you? Why do we need to say, oh, this was in the Camus Screenwriting Festival, this was in the Northridge Screenwriting Festival and placed pretty high. Who are you?
I'll turn that same question though to these guru teachers. What qualifies them?
Sure. And it may, and again, I think you have to look at it in each individual circumstance. And
people
do you respond to what they're saying?
Well, and
that I think is
true. But I also look at there's a lot of self-help teachers out there. There's a lot of people who, it's not that they have necessarily bad things to say. My favorite thing is hearing about a life coach and knowing them personally and knowing that their life is total shit, but that they're teaching other people how to be better with their lives. And I go, well, on the one hand, not sure you should be the person telling people how to live their lives. And yet on the other hand, maybe you have some good knowledge that you can partake in. Is there something you can take away from it?
And that's it, isn't it? We don't know what our doctor's health is like. We don't know necessarily what our psychiatrist's mental health is like.
In the office.
Absolutely right.
My grandfather used to smoke cigars. He was the top pediatrician in his
Anyway, I think when it comes to screenwriting, I think it's very important to be discerning about if you are spending money on something, really be discerning about it, whether it's a book, whether it's a course. Again, I don't think you should be spending thousands of dollars, because I call it feeding the hope machine.
Right.
And I just think that time is better spent writing pages, reading
scripts, and watching movies. Yes, exactly. What we were talking about last week, actually.
Right. What were these questions? Because one of those was kind of somewhat pertinent to this, wasn't it? It was about an emerging screenwriter saying, "Oh, I've heard this," and we said we were going to talk about it on camera.
Yeah. So one of the questions that was asked. So there's 3 comments that we'll get to, I think. The first one, just because it's on my mind at the moment, has to do with writing samples and writing to sell. And this was a conversation that we had a few episodes ago. If you haven't seen it, you can go back and listen. And the question / comment, really, and it wasn't a criticism. It was nice conversation about this. In this particular person's opinion, he said he had heard a lot of people say that because it's so difficult to sell anything, and that for emerging screenwriters, it's far more likely for them to sell a low budget or micro budget movie, and yet that micro budget movie may not fully express your capabilities as a writer, that writing a sample that may not have any chance in selling but can show your capabilities would be a good way to potentially, he used the word pitch a manager. I assume that means as a submission. That could help you get meetings off of that sample.
Sure.
I have a very strong opinion of this, and I have a feeling we probably disagree slightly on it, which is totally fine. Excuse me for that.
So I think of the example of Balls Out. If you know the script, it was, I think, I'll probably butcher this, but I want to say it was written.
The story. Yeah.
I want to say it was perhaps written in or around the 2007 strike. It may not have been, but ultimately what it was it was two writers, one of whom, Malcolm Spellman, was Malcolm Spellman. Right. But they wrote this screenplay as the pen name, the Robotard 3000.
Oh, I remember, yes. Okay.
And they just went, fuck it. It was a fuck it script.
Mm-hmm.
The term being, you know, fuck it. I'm just going to write whatever the fuck I want. I'm just going to get something out there. I'm just going to go, fuck it.
Right.
And they wrote this script, and the script's fucking hilarious. And it kind of went around town at the time of being like,
yeah,
have you read this script? And I remember they read it. I'm not sure if this podcast is still going. I don't think it is. But they used to do the Blacklist table reads, where they would do a podcast reading of scripts they felt were good, and it was the very first one they did, and it was just so fucking funny. It was so funny. And I think with that they went, fuck it, let's just write whatever the fuck. They didn't even put their own names on it, and it went around town as being like, oh, this is the crazy script.
I wonder what their thoughts were. I mean, I haven't ever listened to them speak about it.
But I mean, they didn't write it as them.
Yeah, but yes and no. I mean, we all know that it was them now, and just because you put it's a funny name that goes along with the script, so I could see doing that as part of the selling of the script.
Maybe,
like,
yeah. Now, do I think Now, do I think they wrote it as a sample script, or did they just go, we're going to write the thing that we want to write as a fuck it script? Right. And I do think there's a difference. And I think it comes to what you were saying the other week. If I'm writing something with an eye to it, the final thing being a sample, okay, I guess. But like, where's the passion in that? Well, where do I connect my passion in writing a sample?
I think the way that I think about it and verbalize it is, you know, when we're writing screenplays, we hope, and hopefully you take the position almost, because it's better than even hoping. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, sure.
You know that what you're writing could be a movie. Otherwise, why are you writing it?
Totally.
And that's, I guess, where I mean you don't write samples. Because if you're writing something that no way could possibly be a movie, it's actually not a good sample.
Right.
Because the whole point of being able to send a script out to people is to show that you can write a movie. Yeah. And if your script is good enough to be a movie, then it could sell.
And it's what we were talking about yesterday. The screenplay is not the end product. The screenplay is a stepping stone in the creation of this thing that's going to become a movie.
Right.
So, you know, again, it's what we were talking about the princess. We said, we want to write the princess. We want to do fucking Arya Stark in a tower who fights her way down. It's going to be fucking nuts, crazy action. We've never seen it before.
Right.
And our manager was like, I don't know where that sells, but if it doesn't, it will be a good sample. And we were like, fuck it, we're going to write it anyway. It was almost our fuck it script. You know, to a certain degree, we were like, fuck it, we just want to write this. We don't care what you think. You know?
Yeah, I guess to do it. Consider that to be fuck it. I mean, I think there was always a sense, and we got feedback from lots of other people who said, that's a fucking movie.
Totally. Absolutely right. For sure. And here's the thing. If it hadn't sold, it would be a good sample.
Well, yeah, that's what I had said the other day in our other thing about Winter's Night.
Yeah.
We sold Winter's Night, never got made, but it's a great sample.
Absolutely.
But why? Because it could be a movie. It'd be great. Movie. I hope one day it becomes a movie.
Yeah.
But if your mindset is, well, I'm trying to write something to get a manager. Well, what does that even mean? And I'm not, and I don't mean, certainly I'm not criticizing the person who left the comment.
In any way. No,
totally. Heard this from other people.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that there should only in my opinion, be one reason to write a script for a movie. And that is because you believe that that story should be a movie. If it shouldn't be a movie, well, what other medium could it be? Maybe it should be a pilot. Maybe it should be a book. Maybe it should be something else. But if you believe that that story should be a movie, then write it as a movie. And if it's more ambitious than you can sell at that point in your career, it doesn't mean you can't sell it in 10 years.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be writing it with the intention that one day this will sell for $1 million.
Totally.
Like, that should be, you should believe in every ounce of your body that every script you write deserves to be out in the world as a movie.
Completely.
And so that's what I mean by not writing samples versus writing movies to sell. And interestingly, that segues into the other question. And the question was, how do you know when an idea is better to be a pilot? And that's why the segue is there.
Yeah.
Totally. If you have an idea and you're like, I really think this is a great idea. Should I write a pilot or pitch this as a TV show versus does it make a good movie? Or how do you decide, you know?
So
I feel like I'm butchering the question.
But it was it was along those lines. In fact, this is the question we're going to answer anyway. And I think it was along the lines again of like, how do you know it's? Yeah, it was strangely phrased, wasn't it? But anyway,
look back and
have a little look, see if you can find it. I'll riff on this one for the moment.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's an interesting question. It's sometimes you may have an idea that does suit both. You may go, there is a length of story here that I could tell. For example, we have the rights to a shopping agreement on a book series at the moment, New York Times bestselling book series. We're currently about to take it out next year. And this book series is a trilogy of books. It has a really interesting world that is built up and could be, because of the length of these books, this trilogy could make a really interesting TV series. We're not pitching it first as a TV series. We want to go ahead and pitch the live action film version of it.
Sure.
That said, it's not a super bold, high concept. You can't explain this world or idea that easily. It takes a little bit of time to kind of explain, oh, well, this happens and these things happen, and here's the overall thing. I think if you have a really strong, bold, high concept idea, I
found it, by the way.
Great. Some people mean that that's a very easy to explain. I think that's a little bit reductive. I think it's like that the idea of the movie is the most bold thing. The idea is the most bold thing presented in this thing, not the character, not the world, but the idea of what this thing is so bold. That's what I mean by high concept. I think those generally work better as movies. I think if you're going into and you're drawn more into characters and world and wanting to tell a really expansive story, that might go, oh, we want to do it that. Now, but again, like sometimes it's both. For example, I'll use Legion of the Wolf as an example. Legion of the Wolf was an idea that we had some time ago. And the concept of it is it's the origin of the first werewolf, but set to the backdrop of the fall of Rome. We thought, wouldn't that be an interesting thing to us? And that's quite a high concept idea.
And that's the elevator pitch. You just say that, and someone goes, "Oh, that's cool."
Oh, cool. Origin of the first werewolf. Where do they come from? Well, they come from Rome. Cool, great. Two big ideas. Bosh. Put them together. And originally, it was going to be a movie. And then we thought, there's a way to explore that story through a TV show. So sometimes it does hit both. Anyway, what was the?
I would say, just to kind of put my 2 cents on what you were saying, is that I don't. Like Legion of the Wolf is a great example. I actually do think that high concept doesn't necessarily mean movie or TV, and I think high concept is good no matter what medium you're in terms of is this something that I can very easily. I know you're saying a bold idea. I do think that there is a certain amount of, is it easy to understand? Like Legion of the Wolf, for example, origin story of the first werewolf set to the fall of Rome. I get it. Yeah. It's a reverse Rapunzel meets the Raid. I get it. like those, that's high concept in my personal take as well. It's one of those terms that gets thrown around all the time and everybody has their own beliefs on what it means. But like there are, I think there are TV shows that can be done that way. Then you can start with a high concept idea, and then you have to go into obviously the complexities of how do you make this now a series and not just a singular thing, So to clarify Riley's question, when you two have decided that you want to write a new pilot, what are some of the things you look for in your ideas that give you the indication that it will work better for an ongoing story versus one that works best as a feature? I would love to hear any insights you have on working on pilots. So we could do an entire episode on working on pilots. So for the sake of the fact that we're already 21 minutes in, we will, Riley, talk about the difference between working on a pilot versus working on a movie script at a later date. But in terms of ideas, and when we have an idea, how do we go, hey, we want to write a pilot now. So what's a good idea for a pilot? It's interesting. I think that we usually will start really with just what's a good story, and not go, this is a movie or this is a TV show first, unless it's so obvious. Like if you have an idea for something procedural, and by that I mean like a cop show, a doctor show, the type of show where every week is, a similar style thing.
Could be a self-contained story in a world,
and that's going to continue on and on and on and on and on. Well, that's obviously a TV show. Tends not to be the kind of stuff Jake and I tell as stories for the most part. So that's not usually the way it is. But there is an example of another Legion of the Wolf thing. We adapted a book called The House of the Scorpion. It's a fantastic book. Originally, it was sent to us to adapt as a movie. And, we read it and we both saw very different things in it, ultimately decided that we were going to pass on adapting it as a movie. Lo and behold, a few months later, we end up in a meeting randomly with a wonderful producer, Marisa Pullman, and she says, hey, we're doing House of the Scorpion. We said, oh, that's so funny. We were sent that actually as a book to think about. And, it's a really great book. We just couldn't really land between the two of us on the movie take. And she was like, well, have you ever thought about it for TV? And immediately we both were like, boom. Yeah.
Why didn't we think of it for TV? Yeah.
Now that is interesting. And I think that the first step is to go, what is the interesting thing about this story that I want to tell? If it's about something that you feel needs or would be better served to be told over a longer period of time, then that's a TV show. If it's a story that feels like it could be told in 2 hours, then that's a movie. And I think that you have to be honest with yourself when you come up with an idea and you go, oh, I want to do this thing about this character who goes on like adventures that are, like all over the world and da-da-da-da. And you're going, well, like, sure, you could do, a movie of that, but maybe it would be better served as a TV show because maybe you get to explore that character more. Maybe you get to understand where they're coming from a little bit more.
It's interesting. I think about what our friend Mike Lee said about the differences between TV and features. He said, in features, you close all of the doors behind you for the most part. You're not left going, I wonder what happens with that, you know? Whereas when you write a pilot, you leave all of the doors open. And I think about that a lot. I think it's a really great way of thinking about it. And I think the question comes to, well, with your idea, do you want to tell one singular story and close all the doors behind you?
Right.
Or do you want to keep a bunch of doors open and keep opening them? Like, what is it about this idea? And it's interesting because we are in the process of working on a pilot. We're attached to a Sony TV that is a book series. that we're going to be taking out as a TV series in the new year. Another one. And it was presented to us, well, if it doesn't work in TV, we can also do it as a movie. And yet they're two different kinds of things. And in the TV show version, we're having to explore and expand a lot more that is not present in the book. Characters that perhaps aren't there, or sections of the world that we're creating, so that we can keep opening these doors and exploring different aspects of the world. And that's great, because you go, oh, let's just go and have fun and see where we can go and do all these different things. What's the episode where this happens? What's the episode where that happens? The world, the characters and the situation are created in the book. But we are going, let's not go, you know, A to B to C. Let's see all these different things from all these different character perspectives while still going on that main journey, and yet opening a lot more doors as we go. So that can also be it, is that if you have an idea, you go, oh, great, it's this fantastic idea about the origin of the first werewolf. Go, okay, well, as a TV series, there's going to be a whole plot line that's about his wife and kid that he left in Rome. There's going to be a whole plot line about the guy who he served with and who isn't where he is. There's going to be a whole plot line about the mysterious general of the barbarians that you wouldn't have the time to explore in a 2-hour movie. But suddenly you have the time and freedom to explore if you're doing it for TV. So not
all ideas are ideas where you want to explore those things.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, like the movie that we're writing on this podcast doesn't feel like a TV show to me.
No.
It feels like the kind of thing. Now, do I want a sequel? Probably. We always want franchises. It doesn't feel like a one and done necessarily.
Right.
But there is a difference between a movie whereby we're telling one story for 2 hours.
Yes.
Versus a show whereby you're going to capture an audience long enough to tell a story over 20 hours or 20 different stories or whatever it might be. And, you know, I think you start to feel, it's kind of a feeling. You just kind of get a feeling like, do I want to live in that world with those people for that long?
And I'll add, you know, again, something kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, when it comes to TV, generally you tune in each week because you want a bit of character drama. You know, while there is a plot at play for a lot of TV, especially, you know, non-procedural shows, more serialized shows, there is absolutely a plot at play.
Yeah.
You are tuning in this week to see, oh, what's going to happen with Jon Snow and his wildling girlfriend? Are they going to get together? Like, you're drawn into characters. That's not to say characters are not important in film. They absolutely are so important in film. But you are pulled along by watching those characters in a plot, I feel, in a movie. Whereas in TV show, I kind of feel like you're more attached to the characters and the plot almost kind of sits. It's like, what is the balance of those things? You know, I think in film, it's a bit more plot-based. In TV, it's a bit more character-based. So.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with like how you expand out your idea. You know, when we have started with ideas and gone, maybe, you know, we've had ideas where we go, oh, that's really interesting, but maybe that makes a better TV show than
totally.
You know, or maybe that makes a better movie than it does a TV show. And I think that it does have a lot to do with like, how much story is there that I would want to tell?
Completely.
You know?
Completely.
If it feels like there's too much that I would need to tell in order to fit into 2 hours, then it's a TV show. If
like, for example, a couple of years ago, we wrote a body swap movie. And that's a single story. Yeah. That's not a TV show. No. That's just not. I mean, is there a body swap TV show? Maybe, but I don't know what that is. I find that it'd be inherently confusing,
right?
Because at some point they're going to be like, you're going to lose what you find fun about a body swap movie. Like Freaky Friday doesn't need to be 10 episodes,
but they'll make it.
But they'll make it. They totally will make it.
A lot of movies get adapted into TV shows now, and you go,
what's the Freaky Friday TV show?
Why does that movie need to be told over 3 seasons? I don't understand. It was interesting. There was a show Shooter, that was adapted
Right.
from the movie Shooter.
Yeah.
Actually, not a terrible show.
Sure.
But the first season was literally just retelling the
In the
story
movie.
of the movie,
Totally.
really drawn out.
Right. Sure.
And I enjoyed it. I liked the movie. And then you kind of go, and then they really just had to like figure out where they wanted to go
Right.
with those characters, because once the movie was over, once they finished off the plot of the movie,
Yeah.
it was like, and
now what? Yeah, totally. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
And so I think that, you know, a lot of things, some shows I can see how they become adapted as to in
Yeah,
a movie,
sure.
or like Lethal Weapon becoming a TV show. As much as I rolled my eyes, I go, okay, I get that.
Yeah, you can see these kind of characters. I'm going to tune in.
Guys, and
Totally.
using the IP of Lethal Weapon to get people to watch the show.
Absolutely. For
I
sure.
get it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Or, you know, Star Trek starts as a TV show. You go, yeah, I totally see how that becomes a movie also.
Absolutely right. I could see, yeah. What's the one long episode? Oh, where this happens.
Right.
Yeah,
oh, instead of 1 hour, we get to explore this one story for 2 hours. No.
Totally. Or The Golden Girls would have made a great movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I love The Golden Girls as a kid.
I love The Golden Girls.